For as long as anyone can remember, the Sahel has lived with one sound above all others, the sound of thirst. A land stretched under a burning sun, cracked by time, and held hostage by a sky that decided everything. For generations, farmers across Burkina Faso didn't just work their fields, they watched the clouds, because rain wasn't weather, it was fate. A single storm could save a season. One long dry spell could destroy a village. Hope lived between raindrops, but today, something new is spreading across the horizon, not the wind, not silence. A hum, the sound of pumps, solar fields, water channels cutting new paths through old earth, and for the first time in half a century, the Sahel is learning a new truth. Water doesn't only fall from the sky, water can be built. It started quietly, machinery arrived in villages where nothing new had arrived in decades, trucks rolled in carrying pipes, pumps, solar panels, and the kind of tools people had only seen in foreign documentaries. At first, villagers watched with curiosity, then with disbelief, and finally, with hope, because this wasn't a show. It was proof that the future doesn't always descend from clouds. Sometimes, it is assembled piece by piece, under the open sky, across the provinces. Burkina Faso launched what it called a seasonal agricultural offensive, a major push to give farmers the equipment they had been denied for generations. Old wells were replaced with solar-powered pumps, dry valleys were turned into irrigation corridors, and dusty plains began to glow with long stretches of solar fields. Engineers stood beside farmers, mapping soil, checking water tables, and redesigning farmlands that had once surrendered to drought. The country set an ambitious target: 6,000 tons of wheat in the 2025 to 2026 season, more than double the previous year, not because the rain increased, but because planning did. This wasn't just production, this was confidence returning to their soil. In markets from Caire to Bobo Dioulasso, traders began whispering something new: we might not need imports this year. Rice sellers, long dependent on foreign suppliers, started preparing for a stronger local harvest. Women who used to walk hours to fetch water now operate pumps right outside their cooperatives. What used to take half a day now takes minutes. Children no longer miss school because wells have dried, reservoirs keep classrooms open, and teachers say students stay longer and learn better. And everywhere, from small villages to growing towns, one message keeps spreading: the land was never their problem. It wasn't barren. It was simply unsupported, undeveloped, unwatered. Now that water has arrived, the Sahel is beginning to breathe again. For decades, modern agricultural tools were seen as something only wealthy nations used, but that belief is collapsing. Burkina Faso announced that by 2026, it will be equipped with high-grade scientific instruments for agriculture, irrigation, and climate analysis. Suddenly, new words entered everyday conversations: hydromapping, yield optimization, water corridors, soil data. Real-time monitoring, tools once reserved for international projects are now in local hands. Young technicians with tablets stand beside elderly farmers with decades of experience. The two worlds merge, tradition and technology, and the land responds. Fields once capable of growing only one season now show signs of 2 or even 3 cycles. Vegetables once thought impossible in the Sahel now grow in test plots. Food security is no longer a dream. It is becoming a calculation. For decades, the world repeated one sentence: Africa cannot feed itself. It was written in reports, policy documents, foreign commentaries, and for decades, many believed it. But today, real evidence is challenging that story. Cooperatives are recording their highest outputs in years, farmers are returning to land they once abandoned, and communities that lived at the mercy of the sky are learning to master their own seasons. A farmer in Kaya said something simple but powerful: for the first time, the water is ours. Not borrowed, not donated, ours. That sentence carries 50 years of emotion, because dignity is returning, not as charity, but as infrastructure, but local progress always has global consequences. As water corridors expand, satellite images show green stretching across dry borders, and suddenly, foreign capitals begin to take interest. In New Delhi, analysts call this South-South cooperation, developing nations helping each other without debt traps. In Brussels, agricultural companies worry that fewer African imports might threaten their markets. In Washington, strategists debate whether self-reliance in the Sahel will shift long-standing power dynamics. China watches silently, understanding that whoever helps Africa irrigate will shape the continent's future economy, because here's the truth: a land that can feed itself is a land that can negotiate on its own terms. But the biggest transformation isn't in fields. It's in lives. Clinics stay open because solar grids keep fridges running, households have more time, more energy, more opportunities, migrants who left for cities are beginning to return, because work and dignity are coming back home. Women's cooperatives now manage pumps, run markets, and organize entire districts. Girls stay in school longer, communities hold meetings not about crisis, but about capacity and planning. People talk about the future with a tone that was missing for decades. This is not just irrigation. It is empowerment, but progress isn't a straight line. Some regions advance faster than others, some equipment breaks and needs skilled maintenance, some communities argue over water distribution, market prices shift as production increases. These are not signs of failure, they are signs of movement, because when a country grows, it faces new responsibilities. Channels must be maintained, solar grids must be cleaned, valves must be monitored, data must be understood. This is the cost of self-reliance, not suffering, but stewardship. Many point to the influence of Ibrahim Traoré, not as a savior, but as a catalyst. His message is simple: sovereignty begins with the basics: water, food, and tools. And people have embraced that idea, not through rhetoric, but through results. Communities feel they are part of the change, not spectators to it. When people believe their hands shape their destiny, everything changes. As Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger form the AES alliance, the green corridors take on a new meaning. To them, irrigation is not only agriculture, it is security, stability, strategic independence. Other nations quietly worry, what happens when Africa no longer depends on us? Because for decades, trade systems were built on the assumption that the Sahel would always rely on imports, but every canal challenges that assumption, every crop weakens it, every successful harvest breaks it further. Water is no longer just a resource. It is becoming leverage, power, sovereignty, and as the first major harvest approaches, one question hangs in the air, from villages in the Sahel to offices in global capitals. If water becomes Africa's new strength, how will the world react? Because once a nation can feed itself, everything changes, diplomacy changes, trade changes, politics change, expectations change, and Africa, for the first time in generations, is writing this chapter on its own terms. The Sahel's transformation is not a miracle. It is not luck. It is not charity. It is planning. It is technology. It is local leadership. It is courage. It is water, directed, managed, owned by the people who need it. Burkina Faso's irrigation grid is still expanding, still fragile, still demanding work. Every canal, every pump, every solar field needs care, but communities are stepping forward. They clean channels together, they check valves together, they maintain solar fields together, because this isn't just infrastructure, this is identity, this is dignity, this is a nation rediscovering its strength. And the world, once confident the Sahel would remain thirsty, is beginning to realize that the story has changed. The land is greener, the people are stronger, and the future, for the first time in a long time, belongs to them.